Hello, everyone. My name is Yumi, a PhD student at the Old Dominion University and one of the authors of this paper. So today I'd like to introduce this study, Fake News or Real News, Sharing Behaviors on Social Media about COVID-19. A grand challenge people in the world are currently facing is the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a tremendous impact on many aspects of our life. More or less, I believe everyone has heard about or seen various fake news or misinformation about the COVID-19, whatever it is about to prevent or treat the disease. Some of the misleading and inaccurate information could lead to serious risks and consequences, such as death, if they are followed blindly by anxious individuals or patients. To reduce the negative impact of COVID-19 fake news on people and the society, social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter have made a commitment to remove COVID-19 fake news by developing fact-checking and automatic detection techniques of fake news to block false information immediately. Actually, the interest in studying fake news has been growing over the past few years, as fake news is an increasing problem online. The prevalence of news posted on social media substantially increased the chance for people to read and share fake news. McGrew in 2018 surveyed 8,000 students and found that most respondents were unable to distinguish between fake and real information. Studies suggest that news that allows anxiety, amusement, and anger, or that contains negative, controversial, credible, and interesting content are more likely to be shared widely. Studies also show that people have a tendency to only share information that supports their viewpoints due to confirmation bias. Also, various studies attempt to use techniques or technical methods to perform fake news identification, develop fact-checking and detection tools, and improve the countermeasures against fake news. However, technology alone is not enough to effectively eliminate COVID-19 fake news on the internet. The development of effective interventions to counter fake news also needs to a thorough understanding of human factors and behavior. More research has to be done to understand how fake news spreads from the social and behavioral angle, as the spreading of fake news is accelerated by social media platforms. So we conduct this survey study that collects data from diverse social media users to test the research model, developed using the uses and the gratification theory, impression management theory, and the findings from prior literature. We are particularly interested in finding out whether there are predictable types of fake news that are easier to spread, or there are predictable types of people that are more likely to be spreading fake news. Specifically, our study explores the following research questions. First, what types of fake news are more likely to be spread on the internet? Which type of people are more likely to spread specific types of fake news? Which group of people are more likely for individuals to share fake news with? Two theories, including the uses and the gratification theory and the impression management theory, have been used in this study to explain the hypotheses related to online news sharing behavior in the context of COVID-19. Just a quick introduction of these two theories. The uses and the gratification U and G theory describe the social and the psychological needs that motivate individuals to choose a particular type of media and content. The U and G theory is primarily applied in clarifying individuals' motivation for information and media consumption, which is to derive different types of gratifications. The theory has also been recently used to explain why social media users share online news and information. Based on the U and G theory, sharing news on social media is a type of gratification-seeking activity with purpose, such as entertainment, learning, information seeking, socialization, and status seeking. Second one is the impression management theory, which specifies the way that people use, either consciously or subconsciously, to influence how they are perceived by others and enhance their social identities through social interactions. Within the IM framework, self-presentation describes individuals' activities or strategies to present an image of themselves to others, which can be either assertive or defensive. Online news sharing is more like an act for individuals to demonstrate certain aspects of their personalities than one to disseminate information. Drawing from the IM and the UMG theory, we develop the theoretical framework for this research. Our study excludes the cases of malicious spreading online fake news. So fake news in this study is disseminated by people unconsciously or subconsciously, which means that people engaged in online news sharing for gratification purpose and as an impression management strategy, but they may not be able to or be willing to verify the trustfulness of the news. Synthesize the elements from the prior literature, we identify 3 sets of factors that would impact people's spread of online fake news, which you can see in this figure. First, the personal factors of individuals determine their abilities to easily authenticate the news being shared. The news factors affect the level of difficulties for individuals to confirm the news content. The relational factors determine an individual's willingness to share online news for fear or losing faith in case it is later found to be fake. So the details of these factors and their corresponding hypotheses will be introduced in the following slides. Individuals' personal factors determine their abilities in verifying the trustfulness of the news to be shared, which affects their final decisions to share the news. People will not share the news if they suspect its authenticity unless they are spreading fake news on purpose. Our research considers 3 specific personal factors: knowledge and familiarity, reading behavior, and social media activities. Corresponding hypotheses are listed below. People who are more knowledgeable about COVID-19 are less likely to share COVID-19 fake news. People with broader reading behavior are less likely to share COVID-19 fake news. People who are more active in social media activities are less likely to share the COVID-19 fake news. Second group of factors are news factors, which categorize the online news that people encountered as being either local or global, or being either scientific or political. Based on people's sensitivity to different kinds of news, we propose the following hypotheses. People are less likely to share local and community COVID-19 fake news than global COVID-19 fake news. People are less likely to share scientific COVID-19 fake news than political COVID-19 fake news. The relational factors in this study include online trust on the recipient's prior experience of sharing fake news and the different types of news recipients, including family members, friends, co-workers, and general social media contacts. Based on the considerations of rationale, we hypothesize that people with more online trust are more likely to share COVID-19 fake news. People with more priorly negative sharing experience are less likely to share COVID-19 fake news. This figure depicts the research model about sharing COVID-19 fake news. Gender, age, education level, social status, income, and employment status are used as the control variables in this regression model. And on the right side, we have also classified the different types of sharing behaviors, like sharing to social media contacts, sharing to team members, classmates, sharing to families, or don't do any activities in sharing. We use online survey software, Qualtrics, to distribute and collect the survey data. The data collection period is from May 20th to June 15th in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. The survey was distributed through several emails lists from the researchers' institutes, professional networks, and through several social media platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. In the end, we have collected 274 responses. However, we discard spam response and some invalid response, including uncompleted, and some response always with exactly the same answers. So as a result, only 152 valid responses are retained for our further analysis. Statistical analysis are implemented by SPSS version 26, and because of the exploratory nature of our research and the sample size, limited sample size, we choose an OLS regression model to validate the hypothesis. This table shows the participants' demographic information. We can see that gender basically are balanced, half-half. Most participants are after graduates. About 80% of the participants have a bachelor's degree and above. The majority of the participants, around 69%, have a job. This table shows the statistical data of all the variables. So the first 6 variables were measured by 3 or more items in the questionnaire. The values for these variables were calculated by the mean. The results show that knowledge and reading have a similar distribution among the participants, while trust measurement has a mean of 2.75 with a standard deviation of 0.59, and the maximal value is 5. This indicates that the participants have a bit more different opinions on online trust. Another 2 variables are prior sharing experience and social media activities. The result reveals that some participants are relatively active on social media with longer reading time and more social media accounts. We use logistic regression to find which independent variable in our study has significant effects on such sharing behavior. We found that online trust and social media activity will affect the sharing behavior when people think the COVID-19 news may not be true. In other words, people who are active on social media are less likely to share COVID-19 fake news with others. Those people who have fewer social media activity and more online trust are more likely to spread COVID-19 fake news to their contacts online. The outcomes of the hypothesis testing are summarized in this table. So hypothesis 1 examines whether the people are less likely to share COVID-19 fake news when they are more knowledgeable about COVID-19. This hypothesis is supported by our findings, and it's consistent with those by 10 in 2017 studies that highlight the crucial role of people's prior experience and knowledge in helping them identify reliable and authentic information. Hypothesis 2 explores the negative relationship between people's level of reading behavior and their likelihood to share fake news, and it is not supported by these studies. One of the possible reasons to explain why it's not supported could be people in a pandemic or emergent situation may get overwhelmed or overloaded by the information they received and are not able to verify the credibility of the news which they encountered. Hypothesis 3, which studies the negative relationship between people's social media activities and their sharing of COVID-19 fake news, is supported in this study. This finding implies that active social media users are less likely to spread fake news. in the pandemic. Hypothesis 4A checks if people are less likely to share local and community COVID-19 fake news compared to the global COVID-19 fake news, which is not supported. Hypothesis 4B tested the other news factors, scientific versus political news, with respect to its impact on the sharing of COVID-19 fake news. This hypothesis is supported by the findings, which confirms that people are less likely to share scientific COVID-19 fake news than political fake news. Hypothesis 5, hypothesizing the positive relationship between the online trust and the sharing of COVID-19 fake news is supported by this study. So basically, when people believe the news, they read it true, they will share it with their most trusted people, family members, even though the news may still be faked, with 20% of probability. Hypothesis 6 is developed to investigate whether people with more prior negative sharing experience would be less likely to share COVID-19 fake news. According to the prospect theory, people make decisions based on the value of losses and gains rather than the outcome. However, our results show that hypothesis 6 is not supported. One possible reason could be the fact of prior unpleasant sharing experience is suppressed by other factors. For instance, people tend to overestimate the likelihood of good things happen rather than bad things. So they tend to be more confident in what they believe than what in a common situation. The implications of the study for research are as follows. First, this paper combines the U and G theory and the impression management theories to examine hypotheses related to online fake news sharing behavior in the context of COVID-19. The combined theory are proved to be effective to reveal whether there are predictable types of fake news that are easier to spread, or there are predictable types of people that are more likely to spread fake news. Secondly, we have found some evidence of specific factors that are either related to or not related to people's sharing of COVID-19 fake news behavior on social media. In specific, 3 hypotheses are not supported by our findings. That means that some of the previous results from the literature do not apply well in the highly stressful pandemic situation. Thus, our findings have the potential to empower and enable the scientific community to advance research on fake news in a highly stressful situation and further explore additional factors that are either positively or negatively associated with the sharing of online fake news on social media. From the perspective of practical significance, our findings have a significant impact on social media companies. The findings can be used to support decision makers of social media companies to develop potential strategies and policies for countermeasures and determine how to minimize the negative consequences of fake news spread on social media. This study also has implications for people in terms of their reading behavior in getting information, as well as the ways of building social networks. Although hypothesis 2 is not supported, it does not mean that people should reduce reading. Instead, people should continue to read information from broader but reliable sources to get informed, but the reading should be limited to certain amounts so that they would not get completely overwhelmed. Yeah, the current study has some limitations, like this study used a convenience sample and the sample size was not large enough to eliminate certain sampling bias in independent variables. The study sample does not cover teenagers who are active users in sharing information on social media platforms. But however, due to the regulations, it's not easy to connect them. Consequently, these findings may not be generalizable to some populations. Furthermore, the study collects data through self-reported survey results. So probably further studies could consider collecting stronger evidence by conducting actual behavioral observations. For future directions, we recommended interested scholars to address about limitation in future research first. And the findings of this study should be further validated by recruiting more social media users from different countries to increase the capability of generalization. Particularly, the teenagers' opinions and behaviors should be studied, as they are relatively more vulnerable to misinformation compared to adults. In addition, longitudinal studies should be conducted to validate the findings and see how the contribution of different factors change over time. Future research can also focus on understanding the moderating effects of cultural differences on sharing fake news on social media. Further, in the future, we are interested in studying people's social interaction on shared fake news they received from their contacts on social media, and how social interaction affect people's online fake news sharing behavior. Second, types of knowledge that could help people to more effective identify fake news about COVID-19, and what kind of behavioral difference in sharing fake news and gossip on social media. And the draft of fake news sharing from traditional open social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and shifting to private instant message platforms such as WhatsApp and WeChat. Yeah, we believe there's still lots of gaps, and research directions can be further studied in the future. And hopefully, all of the researchers can go ahead and provide more interesting results for practitioners and let's say governors to be used in future fake news detection and regulations. That's all. Thank you for your time.